The live stream function has opted to work today. Oh my days. My back is in an excruciating. Oh, no, I'm lying. I just need to stretch it out. So, El Prince. This is Niccolo Machiavelli or Machiavelli. I don't know how you'd say it. The Prince, a new translation by Tim Parks. All right. Penguin Classics. Okay, let's just zoom out of this a bit. All right, that's perfect. Contents, letter to Lorenzo de' Medici, different kinds of states and how to conquer them. All right. All right. Introduction. Now, as much as that I am going to read this now, I did want to just open a random book of the Bible today because I haven't read the Bible in a bit. And I've got Ezekiel 40. It says, a new city, a new temple. So let's just, so you can be on the screen in future. Ezekiel, I would say 40. This is that's in the King James Version. All right, so it says here, at least looks of mine is going to be slightly different, but it is what it is. One says, so this is Ezekiel chapter 40, verse 1. I'll read I'll just read the entire chapter 40 because it is quite long and it runs all the way. Yeah, it's got, how many verses does it have? It has 49. Verses. Anyways, in the 25th year of our captivity, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year after the city was captured, on the very same day the hand of the Lord was upon me, and he took me there. In the visions of God, he took me into the land of Israel, and set me on a very high mountain. On it toward the south was something like the structure of a city. He took me there, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of bronze. He had a line of flax and a measuring rod in his hand, and he stood in the gateway. And the man said to me, Son of man, look with your eyes and hear with your ears, and fix your mind on everything I show for you. For you were brought here so that I might show them to you. Declare to the house of Israel everything you see. When they say, well, it says here, look with your eyes and hear with your ears. Imagine if I looked at something and, I wanted to see something different. What I mean by that is, if you see somebody crosses you, or you see disrespect, or you see just a lack of compassion. I know that this isn't exactly what the verse is talking about, but it's more of just too many a time, like I will see something and I don't want to believe it. It was so many times with these trading models of where I would see something appear, and at the same time I don't have faith, because like I can see it with my eyes, but I'm like, is that enough? Just like a lack of trust. But I mean, that's the only thing I can see with. I really can't see with my heart. I mean, I can feel with that, but yeah. Anywho, let me move on here. Now there was a wall all around the outside of the temple. In the man's hand was a measuring rod, 6 cubits long, each being a cubit and a handbreadth. And he measured the width of the wall structure, 1 rod, and the height, 1 rod. The eastern gateway of the temple. So this is now verse 6. The gateway of the temple. Then he went to the gateway which faced east, and he went up its stairs and measured the threshold of the gateway, which was 1 rod wide, and the other threshold was 1 rod wide. Each gate chamber was 1 rod long and 1 rod wide. Between the gate chambers was a space of 5 cubits, and the threshold of the gateway by the vestibule of the inside gate was 1 rod. He also measured the vestibule of the inside gate, 1 rod. Then he measured the vestibule of the gateway, 8 cubits, and the gatepost 2 cubits. The vestibule of the gate was on the inside. In the eastern gateway were three gate chambers on one side and three on the other. The three were all the same size. Also the gateposts were of the same size on this side and that side. He measured the width of the entrance to the gateway 10 cubits, and the length of the gate 13 cubits. There was a space in front of the gate chambers, 1 cubit on this side and 1 cubit on that side. The gate chambers were 6 cubits on this side and 6 cubits on that side. Then he measured the gateway from the roof of one gate chamber to the roof of the other. The width was 25 cubits, as a door faces a door. He measured the gatepost 60 cubits high, and the court all around the gateway extended to the gatepost. From the front of the entrance gate to the front of the vestibule of the inner gate was 50 cubits. There were beveled window frames in the gate chambers and in the intervening archways on the inside of the gateway all around, and likewise in the vestibules. There were windows all around on the inside, and on each gatepost were palm trees. Now, I don't even know what vestibules are. Vestibule meaning says Google defines it as it says an antechamber, hall or lobby next to an outer door of a building. A chamber or channel opening into another. So that's a hall. Oh, so this gives. Alright, okay. Fair enough. This is what a vestibule is. Apparently, it's also part of the female reproductive system or whatever, but. Anywho. Let's go back. Um, the outer court. Then he brought me into the outer court, and there were chambers and a pavement made. Just responding to a message. Anywho, uh, then he brought me into the outer court, and there were chambers and a pavement made all around the court. 30 chambers faced the pavement. The pavement was by the side of the gateways, corresponding to the length of the gateways. This was the lower pavement. What the hell are they talking about? Okay, sorry, I shouldn't say it. But I can't fucking see. Just hold on quickly. Let me just. You see, look, unfortunately, I think, oh my days, wait, I forgot where. I just closed the book. Roommate and well, not roommate, like just one of the guys who rents you on the property walked in with his bra just looking for plywood and stuff like that. So I'm a bit lost. Um, it's just talking about some gateway. Well, it's talking about a new city, a new temple. Then it's about dimensions of a sanctuary. I mean, well, I'm gonna go to Proverbs 9 to 10. Not, I'm just not really understanding what Uh, you know, just go to Proverbs 10. Proverbs 10. And this Bible is the New King James Version. Yeah, the New King James Version. Is there a thing called the New King James? The Authorized, the Modern English. Okay. Why am I swearing while I'm? Anyways, it says a wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is the grief of his mother. Treasures of wickedness profit nothing, but the righteousness delivers from death. The Lord will not allow the righteous soul to famish, but he casts away the desire of the wicked. He who has a slack hand becomes poor, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. But he who gathers in summer is a wise son. He who sleeps in harvest is a son who causes shame. Um, Blessings are on the head of the righteous, but violence covers the mouth of the wicked. The memory of the righteous is blessed, but the name of the wicked will rot. The wise in heart will receive commands, but a prating fool will fall. Let me see what prating means. Prating. Talk foolishly or at tedious length about something. About something. Uh, um, he who winks with the eye causes trouble, but a prating fool will fall. The mouth of the righteous is a well of life, but violence covers the mouth of the wicked. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all sins. Wisdom is found on the lips of him who has understanding, but a rod is for the back of him who is devoid of understanding. Wise people store up knowledge, but the mouth of foolish is near destruction. The rich man's wealth is his strong city. The destruction of poor is their poverty. The destruction of the poor is their poverty. The labor of the righteous leads to life, the wages of the wicked to sin. He who keeps instruction is in the way, or he who keeps instruction is in the way of life, but he who refuses correction goes astray. Whoever hides hatred has lying lips, and whoever spreads slander is a fool. Yeah, why must you hide it? Spending on time with people that you don't like, you might as well just fake it. In the multitude of words, sin is not lacking, but he who restrains his lips is wise. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver, the heart of the wicked is worth little. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for lack of wisdom. The blessing of the Lord makes one rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. To do evil is like sport to a fool, but a man of understanding has wisdom. The fear of the wicked will come. The fear of the wicked will come upon him, and the desire of the righteous will be granted. When the whirlwind passes by, the wicked is no more, but the righteous has an everlasting foundation. As vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the lazy man to those who send him. The fear of the Lord prolongs days, but the years of the wicked will be shortened. The hope of the righteous will be gladness, but the expectation of the wicked will perish. The way of the Lord is strength for the upright, but destruction will come to the workers of iniquity. The righteous will never be removed, but the wicked will not inhabit the earth. The mouth of the righteous brings forth wisdom, but the perverse tongue will be cut out. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked what is perverse. Hmm. Perverse means showing a deliberate and obstinate desire to behave in a way that is unreasonable or unacceptable. So also a contrary to the accepted or expected standard or practice. Um, from what I read and gather from this is when it speaks of whoever hides hatred has lying lips. Well, you know, not just hatred of people. If you're in a crowd of where these people love drinking, or they love doing hard drugs, or they love stealing, or they love talking about other people, or they love being negative, and you lie and you maybe hide your hatred for a certain mentality, you know, why do you hide your hatred? Then you have lying lips. Suddenly you start lying about your beliefs because you want to be in certain crowds. You want to lie about your beliefs because you want to be seen in a certain way. Then it says here, but he who restrains his lips is wise. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver, is choice silver. Mm. The lips of the righteous feed many. This is like when I was speaking to Kunja about um, money. Like here, it's Proverbs 10 verse 22 says, the blessing of the Lord makes one rich, and he adds no sorrow with it." Right? You know when somebody becomes, I would say now, wealthy in terms of monetary gains and stuff. You know, he's got a lot of gold, property, just cash rich, but there's a lot of sorrow with it. There's a lot of misery with it. Not saying everyone, but some of these people who get rich stealing from other people, extorting people, you know, forming these little groups to steal money from the poor, to, you know, kill simply for oil and gold, and who, you know, go and, you know, get all these street kids and say, go and steal these phones and bring them back here, and I can give you this amount of money. I can do that for you. I can do that for you. You know, you've, you're getting all that money, but there's so much sorrow that follows with it. And I mean, the Lord says, and well, here it says, the blessing of the Lord makes one rich. It doesn't say it gives one a lot of silver, it gives one a lot of gold. It doesn't use the word money or use a lot of land and millions of cattle or whatever. It means to be rich, to be righteous, to be at peace, to have, I would say, drive, determination, to have a good will, to be acting in good faith, because you don't want to be someone that has perverse actions, and you don't want to be someone that has lying lips. Furthermore, verse 11, or I guess chapter 11 says, dishonest scales are an abomination to the Lord, but just weight, but a just weight is his delight. Dishonest scales are an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. What I see from that is there's a lot of, I would say, grounds for comparison. And what I mean by that is you'll have not really grounds for comparison, it's dishonest scales, what is a scale used to do? It's used to measure something. So when you were to measure someone's weight, or measure a car's weight, or sometimes it's to compare distances. I mean, scales, I guess, also used on maps and so forth. But if you're talking about weight here, all right. But and it says here, but a just weight is his delight. I feel like sometimes we use a different measuring tool towards different people, but the but a just weight that can be applied to all of these different measuring tools is the Lord's delight. Um, Furthermore, it says, when pride comes, then comes shame, but with the humble is wisdom. The integrity of the upright will guide them, but the perversity of the unfaithful will destroy them. Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. The righteousness of the blameless will direct his way aright, but the wicked will fall by his own wickedness. The righteousness of the upright will deliver them, but the unfaithful will be caught by their lust. Hmm. But the unfaithful will be caught by their lust. It's caught me before. I've had to make an active choice to be like, lusting after women is such a waste of time. Loving one and being a companion with one to me means so much more, because this is a person that you can trust anyway with anything. This is your right hand man, to an extent. This is your that is your best friend. um you see, this proverb saying, I'm already at you know Proverbs 11, and this thing is still showing. Oh wait, must I go to the next? Oh yeah, I click here. All right. So here it says, a false balance is abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. So here it says a false balance. Here it says dishonest scales. So what I mean is, like, people are going to say, because I have money and I'm measuring myself up against this, and I've been someone who's made $500 million, and I've done this and I've done that, and I've studied this, and I am here in society. This is who I am. I am just a school teacher. I am a construct. Well, again, this, in terms of what people see, they see a massive gap between school teachers and, say, construction workers, and somebody who sweeps the streets. But maybe this person here, who in terms of society doesn't earn as much and isn't in as high a position, but when it comes to being righteous, when it comes to not having lying lips. Now, many a times that the reason why this person is down here is because they could have been up here, but they chose to be, unrighteous. They chose to be dishonest. They've been thieves all their lives. They've been liars. They've been, you know, cheats, everything under the sun. But sometimes you'll have two people who are seemingly at the same position, right? But this person, I think, is there's someone using a dishonest scale, because, yeah, maybe you have the same amount of money, say person A and person B, but what did you do to get there? What did you do with your money? You know, just, you know, I just think it's about ethics, and are you being righteous? And righteousness that's the word of the day. So, anyways, then it says here, and when a wicked man dies, his expectation will perish, and the hope of the unjust perishes. The righteous is delivered from trouble, and it comes to the wicked instead. The hypocrite with his mouth destroys his neighbor, but through knowledge the righteous will be delivered. When it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices, and when the wicked perish, there is tribulation. By the blessing of the upright the city is exalted, but it is overthrown by the mouth of the wicked. He who is devoid of wisdom despises his neighbor, but a man of understanding holds his peace. A talebearer reveals secrets, but he who is of a faithful spirit conceals a matter. Where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety. He who is surety for a stranger will suffer, but one who hates being surety is secure. A gracious woman retains honor, but ruthless men retain riches. A gracious woman retains honor, but ruthless men retain riches. Throughout history, ruthless men retain riches. The merciful man does good for his own soul, but he who is cruel troubles his own flesh. The wicked man does deceptive work, but he who sows righteousness will have a sure reward. As righteousness leads to life, so he who pursues evil pursues it to his own death. Those who are those who are of a perverse heart are an abomination to the Lord. But the blameless in their ways are his delight. Though they join forces, the wicked will not go unpunished. But the posterity of the righteous will be delivered. As a ring of gold in a swine's snout, so is the lovely woman who lacks discretion. The desire of the righteous is only good, but the expectation of the wicked is wrath. There is one who scatters, it increases more, and there is one who withholds more than is right, but it leads to poverty. The generous soul will be made rich, and he who waters will also be watered himself. The people will curse him who withholds grain, but blessing will be on the head of him who sells it. He who earnestly seeks good finds favor, but trouble will come to him who seeks evil. But he says, he who trusts in riches will fall, but the righteous will flourish like foliage or foliage. He who trusts in his then it says, he who troubles his own house will inherit the wind, and the fool will be servant to the wise of heart. The fruit of the righteous is a tree of life, and he who wins souls is wise. If the righteous will be recom- what? Recompensed on the earth, isn't it meant to be? Well, it says recompensed. I mean, it says in the earth. Here it says on the earth. What is recom? It says make amends to someone who lost. How much more the ungodly and the sinner? Then 12 says, whoever loves instructions loves knowledge, but he who hates correction is stupid. Now, to just make a quick shift. So we won't skip through any of this. Figured why not? Some reading is always good. Introduction here says, right, it says necessity, must, have to, inevitably, bound to. These are the words that recur insistently throughout the prince. And then again, success, victory, prestige, achievement, and on the other, loss, failure, defeat, death. These opposites are linked together by an almost obsessive use of because, so that, hence, therefore, as a result, as a consequence. From start to finish, we have a vision of a man maneuvering precariously in a suffocating net of cause and effect. What is at stake is survival. Anything extra is luxury. The Prince was written by a 44-year-old diplomat facing ruin. After 14 years of influence and prestige, a change of regime had led to his dismissal. Suspected of conspiring against the new government, he was imprisoned and tortured. The rapid reversal of fortunes could not have been more devastating. Found innocent and released, he left town to live with his wife and family on a small farm. For a worldly man and a compulsive womanizer, used to being at the frenetic heart of public life, this too felt like punishment. Idle and bitter, he tramped the hills by day, and in the long, empty evenings began to write down some considerations on how to win power, and above all, how to hold on to it, how not to be a victim of circumstance. The result was a slim volume that would be a scandal for centuries. Niccolò Machiavelli was born in Florence in 1469, the same year Lorenzo de' Medici Il Magnifico came to power, first male child after two daughters. Niccolò would grow up very close to his father, Bernardo, an ex-lawyer, mostly unemployed with good contracts but no significant wealth or influence. If the sun was to rise, oh dear, how far have I skipped now? If the sun was to rise in the world, I must. Hmm. If the sun was to rise in the world, he was determined to do so. So he would have to count on his own wits and charm. Niccolo's younger brother Toto chose not to compete and went into the priesthood. The boy's mother, it should be said, was an extremely devout woman, a writer of religious poems and hymns. The father, on the other hand, was skeptical, more at home with the sober works of Latin antiquity than the Bible. Niccolo may have taken his writing skills from his mother, but over divisions on religion he stood with his father and the Roman historians. One of Lorenzo il Magnifico's one says of Lorenzo il Magnifico that he came to power, but officially Florence was a republic, and since Lorenzo was only 20 years old in 1469, he was far too young to hold elected office. An explanation is required. When in the 13th century the Florentines had thrown out the noble families who used to run the town, they introduced a republican constitution of exemplary idealism, a government of 8 priori led by one gonfaloniere or prime minister would be elected every 2 months by drawing tags from a series of bags containing the names of well-to-do men from different guilds in different areas of town. This lottery would allow each major profession in each geographical area to be adequately and constantly represented. Every individual of a certain social standing could expect a brief share of power in order that no one could ever seize it permanently. The system was unworkable. Every 2 months, a new government might take a different position on key issues. The potential for instability more or less obliged whichever family was in the ascendant to step in and impose continuity. From 1434 on, the Medicis, first Cosimo, then Piero, then Lorenzo, had been manipulating the electoral process to make sure that most of the names in the bags were friendly to themselves and that all of those who actually selected for government would toe the Medici line. Hence, although the Florentines still liked to boast that they were free citizens who bowed the knee to no man, by the mid-15th century they were in fact living in something very close to a dictatorship. When the rival Pazzi family tried to assassinate Lorenzo in the Duomo in April 1478, it was because they saw no legitimate way of putting him in his place as an ordinary citizen. Machiavelli thus grew up in a society where the distance between how things were actually run and how they were described as being run could not have been greater. He was close to his ninth birthday when the captured Pazzi conspirators, one an archbishop, were hung upside down from the high windows of the city's main government building and left there for weeks to rot. He would have understood very young the price of getting it wrong in politics. The young Machiavelli might have also had reason to doubt that there was any meaningful difference between matters of religion and matters of state. The Pope had backed the Pazzi conspiracy, priests had been involved in the assassination attempt, and Lorenzo was excommunicated after it failed. The religious edict was a political tool. A war between Florence and Rome ensued, and the hostility only ended in 1480, when Turkish raids on the southern Italian coast prompted a rare moment of unity in the peninsula. Years later, Lorenzo would so ingratiate himself with a new pope as to get his son Giovanni made a cardinal at age 13. From excommunication to pope's favorite was quite a change of fortune, and once again It was more a matter of politics than of faith. Nothing, it appeared, was beyond the reach of wealth and astute negotiation. At this point, Machiavelli was 21. We know very little of his early adult life, but one thing he definitely did at least once was to listen to the fiery preacher Girolamo Savonarola, head of the influential monastery of San Marco. Savonarola was a different kind of Christianity. Rather than the corrupt, pleasure conscious world of papacy, whose decadence had offered no resistance to the rise of humanism, this austere monk represented an early manifestation of what we have come to call fundamentalism, a return to the biblical text as a sole authority on earth and a vision of the church as embattled and defensive in a world increasingly interested in values that had little to do with the gospel story. With great conviction, Savonarola preached the virtues of poverty, advocated the burning of any book or work of art that was impure, and prophesied doom for the sinful Florentines in the form of a foreign invasion. In 1494, his prophecy came true. To get any grasp of Machiavelli's diplomatic career and the range of reference he draws on in The Prince, one must have some sense of the complicated political geography of Italy in the 15th and early 16th centuries, and of the profound change that occurred in the 1490s, a change that would determine Italy's fate for the next 350 years. For the most of the 15th century, there had been five major players in the peninsula: the Kingdom of Naples, the Papal States, Florence, Venice, and Milan, extending from just south of Rome to the southernmost tip of Calabria. The Kingdom of Naples was by far the greatest. Wedged in the center, with only precarious access to the sea, Florence was the smallest and weakest. All five powers were in fierce competition for whatever territory they could take. Having lost much of their overseas empire to the Turks, the Venetians were eager to expand inside the northern Italian plain, Ferrara, Verona, Brescia, and down to the Adriatic coast, Forli and Rimini. Conscious of the size and power of a now unified France to the north, Milan hoped for the gains to the south and west, Genoa as a counterweight. Florence simply tried to get bigger in any way that was convenient. Over the previous century, the Florentines had captured Arezzo, Pisa, and Cortona and wasted huge energies in a series of failed attempts to conquer Lucca. Rome's aim under any pope was always to expand north and east into Romagna and Emilia, with a view to swallowing up Perugia, Bologna, Rimini, and Forli, a project that would bring into conflict with both Venice and Florence. In the far south, Naples was governed by a branch of the House of Aragon, but the crown was contested by the Angevin kings of France and by the Spanish royal family, also Aragons, which already ruled Sicily. So the scenario was complicated. Scattered between the large states were at least a score of smaller ones, some no bigger than a town, the surrounding fields, and all constantly under threat of invasion from one enemy or another. However, if the situation was really static, it is also true that there were few major changes. As soon as one power achieved some significant military victory, the others immediately formed an alliance against it to halt its progress. Florence, in particular, owed its continuing independence largely to the fact that if Venice, Milan, or Rome tried to take it, the other two would at once intervene to prevent this happening. Well, he says Florence in particular owed its continuing independence largely to the fact that if Venice, Milan, or Rome tried to take it, the other two would at once intervene to prevent this from happening. If this is in 1494, this is literally the same stuff that happened when you speak about, the League of Nations or the United Nations. Even if you just think of World War One, World War Two, it's the exact same thing of like, we don't all want to work together, but we don't want that person to have too much power. So everyone is fine as long as not everyone has too much control, because everyone wants to feel significant. I mean, even just reading this, it says that Machiavelli grew up in a system of where, although everyone thought that they were governed by certain rules, I mean, like them boasting of, oh, the government is changed every single 2 months, and we are not governed by one single man, and we are free, and so forth and so forth. But they don't understand the fact that they are, you are being ruled by certain people. You're being given the illusion of choice because that's going to keep you happy. I mean, you'd rather have an election not go your way, but then because you went into the voting process, you believe like, oh yeah, okay, no, something's good still happen. I mean, the only thing that I can relate to Proverbs here is, but the soul of the unfaithful feeds on violence. That's what it say. Yeah. So for more than 100 years, a certain balance of power had been kept. All this ended with the French invasion of 1494. The invasion was, as Machiavelli himself explains in The Prince, largely the Italians' own fault. For some time, the five states had been caught in the habit of frightening each other with the threat of foreign intervention. During the war against Rome and Naples in 1480, Florence had invited the French king to pursue his claim to the throne of Naples more actively. In 1482, during a Venetian assault on Ferrara, Florence, and Milan encouraged the Turks to step up their attacks on Venice's maritime possessions. Venice had replied by inviting the Duke of Orleans to pursue his claim to fight Milan, sorry, claim to pursue his claim to Milan. In a war against Naples in 1483, Pope Innocent the is that the eighth, yeah, the eighth had remained the Duke of Lorraine, that he too had a claim to the southern kingdom and invited him to send troops. There was an element of bluff and brinkmanship in these threats, but in 1494, when King Charles the Eighth of France accepted Milan's invitation to make good his claim to the crown of Naples, the bluff was called. Charles marched south with an army far larger than any Italians had seen in living memory. From that moment on, the peninsula would not be free from foreign intervention until the completion of the Riscorgimento in 1870. Struggling to hold Naples, the French would invite the Spanish from Sicily to split the kingdom with them, and the Spanish, after Charles I of Spain inherited the crown of the Holy Roman Empire, would eventually push France back to the north of the Alps, put Rome to the sack, and dominate Italy for 150 years. But that is to leap, but that is to leap ahead. In 1494, when the French first marched through Lombardy heading for Naples, Florence was directly in their path and, what's more, an ally of Naples. At this point, Lorenzo il Magnifico had been dead for 2 years, and the Medici regime was led by his incompetent son Piero. So abject was Piero's capitulation to Charles, so spineless his decision to simply surrender the city's dependent territories that the Florentines rebelled against him. The Medici regime collapsed, and very soon the preacher who had been prophesying this disaster was made gon- Gonfaloniere, first minister, this time on a yearly rather than a 2 month basis. Girolamo Savonarola ruled Florence from 1498, sorry, from 1494 to 1498, during which the time the city passed from being one of the centers of Renaissance humanism to book burning fundamentalist theocracy. Realizing that Savonarola's claim to be God's prophet was a far greater threat to its authority than any humanism, skepticism, or eclecticism, the church in Rome did everything possible to bring about his downfall. And in 1498, having lost much of his support in Florence, the preacher was convicted of heresy and burned at the stake. It was shortly after these dramatic events that Niccolò Machiavelli succeeded in getting himself elected to the important positions of the Secretary of the Second Chancery, one of the two key state departments in Florence, and soon afterwards the Secretary of the Ten of War, a committee that dealt with foreign relations and war preparations. Machiavelli was 28. We have no idea how he arrived at such appointments at this early age. There is no record of any special experience that would warrant such confidence in his abilities. But within months, he was traveling to neighboring states to represent Florence's interests, and over the next 14 years, he would be involved in important, often long drawn out missions to the King of France, the Pope, the Holy Roman Emperor, Cesare Borgia, Caterina Sforza, and many others. In between these missions, he was frequently and very actively engaged with Florence's ongoing military campaign to retake Pisa, which had regained its independence during the French invasion. Pisa was crucial to Florentine commerce in that it gave the town an outlet to the sea. Introductions to the prince generally played down Machiavelli's abilities as a diplomat, presenting these years as useful only insofar as they offered him the material he would draw on for his writing after he had lost his position. Machiavelli would not have seen things that way. For more than a decade, he was Florence's top diplomat and proud to be so. And if the missions he undertook did not produce spectacular results, this was largely because he was representing the weakest of the main states in Italy in a period of particular confusion and vulnerability that would eventually see four foreign powers militarily involved in the peninsula: France, Spain, the Holy Roman Empire, and Switzerland. Savonarola had taken Florence towards an alliance with France. The priest's successors followed the same policy, but without any clear vision of how the city might achieve stability and security in the long term. To make matters worse, having decided in 1502 that the Gonfaloniere, or first prime minister, should be elected for life, the Florentines gave the job to Piero Sonderini, an honorable man but chronically incapable of making any kind of bold decision. Machiavelli's diplomatic issues, and an honorable man, but chronically incapable of making any kind of bold decision. Kind of like trading a bit of like you can be this amazing analyst, but you're unprofitable because you're not a good trader. You can't make this. I mean, it's been for centuries. It's been bothering people. Machiavelli's diplomatic career was thus mostly taken up in attempts to persuade surrounding and threatening states to leave Florence alone and not to expect financial or military help from her for their wars elsewhere. That is, as far as there was a discernible long term policy, it was one of prevarication. Far from home, Machiavelli would frequently receive contradictory orders after he had already started negotiating. Arriving in foreign towns, he would find that his expense allowance wasn't sufficient to pay couriers to take his messages back to Florence. Sometimes he could barely afford to feed and clothe himself. Such was the content of the more powerful monarchs that he was often obliged to wait days or even weeks before being granted an audience. It is in the light of these frustrations that we have to understand Machiavelli's growing obsession, very much in evidence in The Prince with the formation of a citizen army. Florence, Florence was weak partly because of its size, but mostly because it had no military forces of its own. It relied on mercenary armies, which were notorious for evaporating when things got tough. Before the gates of Pisa, for example, a power base built on an efficient and patriotic civilian army would give a diplomat like Machiavelli a little more clout and respect when he negotiated, or so he hoped. In June of 1502, 4 years into the job, Machiavelli met Cesare Borgia, son of Pope Alexander V. With his father's support, Borgia was craving out a new state for himself on the northern borders of the Papal States and had just captured the city of Urbino to the east of Florence. Sent on a mission to dissuade Borgia from advancing into the Florentine territory, Machiavelli was deeply impressed by the man. Seductive, determined, cunning, and ruthless, Borgia was a leader in the epic mode. Certainly, he could hardly have been more different than the diplomat's dithering boss, Soderini. See how it says that? Seductive, determined, cunning, and ruthless. I'll go to Proverbs, I think it's in 10. Um, it says here, Proverbs 11, verse 16. A gracious woman retains honor, but ruthless men retain riches. But ruthless men retain riches. I mean, it says it here, dude. He was ruthless. Machiavelli was on another mission to Borgia in January 1503 when the adventurer invited a group of rebels to the negotiations in the coastal town of Senigallia, then had them seized and murdered as soon as they were inside the town walls. Here was a man, Machiavelli realized, determined to take circumstance by the scruff of the neck. It was not so much Borgia's willingness to ignore Christian principles that fascinated him, as his ability to assess a situation rapidly, make his calculations, and act decisively in whatever way would bring the desired result. This modern positivist attitude, with thought and analysis, serve insofar as they produce decisive action, rather than abstract concepts. lies at the heart of the prince. Meanwhile, Florence writes I'm gonna go and chill for a bit before New York PM. I'm on page 12 of this thing. I'm gonna end this here and then, yeah.